Live from the Subaru of Gwinnett Studio inside the Sonesta Gwinnett Place Atlanta Hotel, it's time for Regions Business Radio. Regions Business Radio is presented by Regions Bank. Brave the beginning. Member FDIC. Now, here's your host, J.D. Mealer.
Good morning. Thank you, Mike Salmon. Good to see you. Well, I wish I could see all of you that are listening to the podcast, but I'm going to pretend like I do. Good to see you all this morning. It's March of 2022, and the world is very interesting right now. There's a lot going on geopolitically in our world, and we're certainly not an opinion or a news podcast, but in the world of banking and finance, you cannot help but understand that the things of this world are impacting you. They're impacting your employees. They're impacting your decision-making. Everything from the interest rate environment that we're in to the supply chain. What does that mean? And by the way, if you're unsure of what the supply chain means or how it reacts, you can go to one of our previous episodes with Marty Parker from University of Georgia Terry College of Business, who gave us a little bit of supply chain 101. So, there is a ton going on. We're currently in the midst of what we're just going to call a rising interest rate environment. The Fed has not only indicated, but they've taken action to begin raising interest rates. And as consumers and as business people that listen to this podcast, I would just sort of caution against making blanket decisions just because somebody on your favorite podcast or on the news said that you should make a decision because of what rates are doing. Rates remain at historical lows. As a matter of fact, this is probably an environment of rising interest rates that we're going to see for some time. I just want to espouse for you business owners and executives the idea of access to capital as opposed to rate and fee decisions. I think your ability to access capital, to preserve capital, and to grow your balance sheet through the acquisition of assets and other performing maybe acquisitions is very important. So I would say to our business owners and executives, don't panic borrow because you think that you have to do something because rates are about to rise. It certainly is prudent, however, to have a conversation with your banker about what rates are doing, how that affects your cash flow, and what your plans are for the next 12 to 18 months. So have that conversation with your banker. It's very important. Look, the truth is, as interest rates rise, historically, you've seen a rise in savings rates and ECRs. Not sure that's going to be the case going forward with this rise in interest rates. Now, short-term borrowing, long-term borrowings. As a matter of fact, it's interesting that when short-term rates started to tick up, mortgages went up, then the mortgage rates have dropped back down. So long-term rates, the yield curve is acting a little funky. Just a cautionary idea would be as your rate to borrow is going to increase, both midterm, short-term, and long-term, and don't expect that to naturally flow to your savings accounts because, and here's why, a lot of people don't understand this, historically banks are going to pay more interest to collect more deposits. That's the idea. Banks are going to increase their deposit rate. For those of you that have historically sought CDs or money market rates, you get higher rates on those instruments because that bank needs to raise capital to in turn loan it out. Banks are flush with cash, including us at Regions. So we want to make more loans from the cash that we do have. So I would encourage you to talk to your Regions banker. If you don't have a Regions banker, you need to get one, and you're going to meet one here on the podcast in just a few minutes that I'm going to introduce you to. But in the meantime, we got a couple of guests today. I'm going to introduce you first to a name that you may recall from about a year ago, a good friend of the program, a wonderful friend of Regions Bank in Gwinnett, Northeast Georgia, and that is our friend Ryan Jones. Ryan, welcome back to the podcast.
Good morning. Great to be here.
So about a year ago, you were called into a new vocation, and after working together for quite some time, you decided, you were led to take a new position at the Neighborhood Cooperative Ministries. Why don't you tell us about that and tell us how it's going?
Yeah, just as you said that, I went back in my mind to our last podcast, and I believe our last podcast, it probably wasn't that far from the time where I made the transition into the nonprofit world, but we were on with Georgia Mechanical, a client of Regions, and we were talking about a collaborative effort between the company and us, where we had the business owner had actually done a fundraising campaign at their facility with their employees to fund some needs around Christmas for the families at my church.
Yes.
And I don't know, it's kind of cool to think back. That was kind of right before I made this this fun decision. But yeah, I read a book a few years ago that talked about spiritual, social, and financial capital, right? And kind of the way we should think about these things. And you talk about interest rates and that type of thing. And what the book said is, I'm 38 years old, and around this time in life is a time where we kind of have it backwards sometimes, right? And we think about the financial part of life, and we spend all of our time and our effort acquiring money, right? Mm-hmm. And I think it's helpful for a banking client too, probably, to think about it in these terms, in that you're making rational decisions based upon advice from people like Regions Bank, rather than decisions based solely upon that financial aspect. So I made a decision that not a lot of people make, but this time in life, I should be focused on my social capital, my family, my community, and that's a thing that I was actually able to do at the bank also. My spiritual capital, my church life, and things like that. And then, if I have to work when I'm 70 years old, that's okay with me. But for right now, so I joined the Neighborhood Co-op. We focus on the basic needs. So we do food and shelter as our two primary objectives. And so we've learned through a lot of research that families can't focus on anything else if they don't have a roof over their head, mm-hmm. and shelter to sleep at night, and then food to fill them up, and it kind of creates a cycle when you don't have those things that affects kids. And the area we serve in is in Norcross is just a high poverty kind of area. 45% of the kids in our area are growing up below the poverty line. So there's 4 of us in the room right now. So if that was the case in this room, that would be about half of our kids. We would not be able to provide the basic needs for them. So it's been a fun start, fun adventure.
There a lot to dive into there, because you were a very successful banker. You had a great career. Your clients still love and miss you at the bank. I'm sure. I'm going to introduce everyone to Jason Lord in just a moment. He's one of our commercial RMs at Regions, but I know that Jason's heard from some customers about their experience with you. But what I always thought about you, Ryan, was there was a higher calling, and I feel like this was it for you, that anyone that knew you, anybody that was around you, knew that you have a servant's heart. And you played that out perfectly in the professional and financial world at Regions, and had an impact on us the short time that you were with us and those customers. But your heartbeat was that of a servant. So you were able to serve customers at the bank, but this really lined up with your core values and the impact that you wanted to have. Has it been both satisfying for you since you've made the move, and how impactful has it been on you to have made that move?
Yeah, first I would say it's one thing that I learned in making this move, and the higher calling, is that this is me. It's not anybody else, right? So there's my banking career was awesome, and if I would have stayed being a banker for the rest of my career, I could have done similar things in my life. And you do that, and that was the culture that we had on our team, is that we weren't just bankers, right? We were people that that cared about each other. We're people that cared about our health. We cared about our communities. I don't know, I'm not employed by you anymore, so I can't say JD did make us walk up the 7 flights of stairs of the Regions building in Gainesville, so to help our health a little bit. So that was one of our team rules. But and the interesting thing too is that that's what we do at the bank, and that's why that relational aspect is something that if we can figure that out from all walks of life, from the business world, from the nonprofit world, that's what the families that we serve are missing, right? The basic needs are great, right? We help with putting folks up in hotels that are about to be homeless. We help with paying rent. We help with the food. We help with things like that. But the biggest thing that a lot of our families are missing is just that relational component. You have the Maslow's hierarchy of needs where you start at the bottom with the basic needs, right? And you move up into the love and belonging. Then you move up into the self-actualization, the future-based needs. And the biggest thing that we see is that people like me and you, right? I grew up with an awesome mom and dad that loved me. I have friends and family that if something happened to me, I'd be okay, right? Mm-hmm. But that relationship, if we could figure out how to merge those things together with the corporate world and with the nonprofit world, in that there's things that a banker, and y'all do this, skills that you have that really help people that I serve, right? Mm-hmm. And serving and volunteering is not just carrying a box or painting a wall. Oftentimes it's just being a friend to somebody, right? And that's what we did at the bank. That's why people actually, I haven't told you this, somebody called me 2 weeks ago. You probably know who it is. But he just wanted to talk about his situation and things, and it's funny, it's been a year. But he just, I was somebody. And that's a cool thing that you have the opportunity to do as a banker too, is if you develop those relationships, you have friends for your whole life that you've banked forever. Yep. And that's just part of the deal,
It is. Well, it makes me think. I mean, I'm looking over at our producer and friend to Regions Business Radio, Mike Salmon. Mike, how often, I'm going to put you on the mic for a second, how often do we sit in here on these podcasts and it always comes back to relationships?
Every single time.
It is.
Every time.
It is. Do you find that interesting, given the fact that it seems like the world has gone so virtual, where relationships seem so flimsy? But here we constantly have professional people, bankers, business owners, investors, community servants, and it always comes back to the importance of a relationship.
Because you guys lead with relationships when you talk to folks. I like it, and I've said this, you've heard me say this before. I love it when you talk about your clients and you say we.
Yeah.
You never say they. Yep. You always talk about your clients saying we did this or we've got to do this.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's priceless.
It is. Thank you, Mike. Ryan, I appreciate that perspective. And I'm pausing because it challenges me to think about, in a world, you're competing with others. You really are. You're competing for wallet share.
Yeah.
You're competing for dollars to support, neighborhood co-op. So you got to have a compelling story. You got to have results. You got, by the way, if I may, I'm going to send you the link to our most recent podcast where we had Larry Dorfman on from a company called Roots Real Estate. And you need to listen to what they do. There's probably something that y'all can do together. I know he's working with Randy Redner at the Community Foundation. Yep. I'm going to send that to you to listen. And anyone else that's listening today, please go back and listen to our last episode with Larry Dorfman and Justin Smith so you can learn more about Invest with Roots. It's a very compelling new approach to multifamily real estate and rental that I think that y'all would really benefit from knowing.
Huge elephant in the room for Gwinnett County is the cost of living and the lack of places to put folks.
Well, I'm not going to relive the whole episode, but they provide housing, and they give the tenants an opportunity to earn their security deposit back. They get to live in it like they own it, and there's a financial literacy aspect, so they understand that there's more to life than hoping you get your deposit back.
Yeah,
it's compelling, and people's lives begin to change if you own something. If you're stuck in that now, you think about some of the people that you serve. You got to get them into a hotel.
Yep.
But if they get up on their feet and they start crawling, walking, running, then eventually they may aspire to get into an apartment or get into a single family residence that they can rent, but can they see beyond that? And you help them do that, and Larry's group helps them do that. I think it's so. JD, why are you talking about this on a banking podcast? You know what? If we don't take care, look, the regulators require us to take care of our communities. We don't do it because we're required. We take care of our communities because it's what's right, and we need to take care of our neighbors. So that's why I think it's so compelling that. Well, Ryan, you mentioned somebody sought counsel from you not too long ago. We're not going to say their name. Wouldn't be too hard to figure out. But at the same time, how often do you see people from Regions Bank? How do you? I mean, you have lunch with Phil Bonelli every now and then, and you see other folks. I mean, it's relationship.
Yeah, and Phil makes me better at life. I mean, that was the cool thing that we had going on with our team, is that you're surrounded by people that make you better, and it's hard as you get older, and it's harder to make friends. It's hard to surround yourself with people that build you up, and that's the hope that I can help in my job now, is that being that person to when someone, I think that's a great thing for us to aspire to be as bankers, as people, is to being someone that when I think of that person like Phil, I think of we set up we're meeting monthly for breakfast just to talk about life, and he has another group of men that he meets with that they set goals for each other, right? And so one thing before we meet again is I'm going to make goals for myself for this year, and we're going to talk about it and hold each other accountable. But when I think of him, I think of someone that when I'm around him, I'd smile, I feel better about myself, and then I feel like I need to do something, right? I feel like
call to action.
Yeah.
Well, not to have a love fest on the podcast, but people think the same of you. They do, and you know why? There's an old commercial that says you're known by the company you keep, and the thing that I just pound into my kids' head is show me your friends and I'll show you your future, and that's why I'm very selective about the team that I build. So I just want to say back to you, you have that effect on people too. Or you wouldn't be doing what you're doing at Neighborhood Co-op, having an impact on a variety of ministries, working to bring different ministries together to serve an entire community. That's a calling, and it requires a very special talent, and I think a very special ability to build relationships. I do want to ask you about, there's been two things that I want to ask you about since our last time together on the podcast, not personally. Number one is you were talking about 7 flights of steps and holding each other accountable. It's amazing that you made this decision to leave banking, go into the ministry, and you had a little bit of a hiccup as you were making that transition, and now you're fully recovered and just a mishap on a jog. And so how are you doing, and what did you learn from that situation?
Yeah, I did get run over by a Chevy Silverado, so it wasn't. I like to make the distinction. It was a Chevy Silverado. It wasn't a Neon or a small vehicle. But
it was a big truck. That
it was
ran
a
you
big
over.
truck. Yeah, he got me. But I'm still here. That was last May, so I usually train around this time of year. Actually, for it's my annual thing that I do. I go to Charleston, do the bridge run. It's a 10K, and I try to run real fast. That's my goal. And so I don't know. With the last couple years in everybody's life has been crazy, and people have health challenges. And one thing that I've learned is just to be grateful every day that I have. And you don't have to be hit by a car for that to happen, but it is interesting how quickly you forget. And I think with everything that's going on in the world and Ukraine right now, it's a moment where we can all kind of talk to our kids and just try to remember, right? It's so hard to remember when you wake up that, it's almost been a year now since I was hit by the car, but I'm still here,
Yeah.
I woke up and here talking to you.
You're doing your thing.
Right.
You know? So my second and final question for you over the last year, we're talking about relationships. And certainly everyone cheers and we're thankful that you're okay. Part of your recovery is because you were so healthy.
Probably, yeah.
So you all had a banquet for co-op, and something very special happened at that banquet, and it was again under the theme of relationships. Can you share the amazing? I think and look, it's been nationwide news. Everybody's heard about it, but you had a front row seat. You helped orchestrate it. What happened at the banquet?
Yeah, well, my first disclaimer is, a lot of times in life you just have to, and Phil and I talked about this too, you just got to start doing it and figure it out, right?
Yeah.
I am not an event planner, never have been, never will be. And this year, it's kind of hard because now, we have a fundraiser every year. So it's like, what do we do this year, after last year? But one of the first things I did is I have a friend who played for Georgia. And we have this event every year, and last year we were stepping it up a notch, having it at a new venue and trying to make it a big deal and have some success. So my first order of business, I listened to actually a podcast that Coach Richt was on. It's the Passion City Church podcast, and I was listening to him talk about his experiences, and he's had some health issues and things, and so I just thought, I wonder if I could ask my buddy if he would come speak. And it was right around the time that he had gone public with his diagnosis. And I didn't think we'd have any chance to get him there. And
am I right? Is it Parkinson's?
Yes. Yep. Yeah, it's early.
Yeah.
He talks great. You can tell it's difficult for him to do the basic things, get around and move around. But long story short, he said yes. And in the planning process, we learned that one of his former players was actually on staff at one of our big supporting churches, Victory Church. They're awesome. I mean, they're incredible partners. But so we had this thought that maybe during our interview with him that we would bring the player's name's Trey Battle. We'd bring Trey up and have him talk about his relationship with Coach. And we learned through that process that Trey, he was an NFL player, amazing human being, eloquent, incredible community servant, incredible person. But after his time in the NFL, he had gone back to school at Georgia, and he had one former teammate that had committed suicide, Paul Oliver. Mm-hmm. Coach Richt later created the Paul Oliver Network to support his former players. He had another former teammate die in a tragic fire accident, and he'd been through a lot. And so he called Coach Richt from a bridge, and he was going to commit suicide. And he called Coach, was the first person he thought of. And he told this story before. He told it at church and everything, but he'd never said it to Coach in person.
Way.
Yeah, he'd never. So when we were talking to him, we're like, "That's incredible. It's been a long time, And he said he talks to him all the time, and they're friends and stay in touch, but he'd never spoken those words to him. And so we called Trey up, and Trey stands up, and Coach immediately starts bawling. And I remember I asked his son David. His son David helps with his booking and stuff. I said, "Is it okay if we bring Trey up there?" And he said, "Yeah, Dad's been a bit of a crier lately, but that's okay." So so he stands up, Coach starts crying, and then he goes up there. And Trey just looks him straight in the eye. There's 300 people there. Looks him straight in the eye and articulates. If it was me, I would have been a mess. Yeah. I wouldn't have been able to speak, talk. I wouldn't have been able to communicate.
Wow.
And he looks right at him and says, "Thank you for saving my life. Thank you for picking up the phone and saving my life." And it was just one of those things, like, I will always remember. Everybody who was there will always remember. But again, it speaks to the relationships, and it speaks to the value. You just never know. You never know of that customer. You never know what somebody's going through. But us, as bankers, is what I do now. You just never know. You never know when being a friend to somebody is going to result in saving somebody's life.
And you would think Trey, he was an NFL player, had a great career at Georgia. And then he finds himself on a bridge. By the world's standards, the guy was successful.
Yep.
And he needed something else, and Coach was there. It makes me want to sort of challenge. We 100%. Everyone listening and everyone in this room, we know somebody that needs to hear from us today. And we need to do that. Almost make that part of your accountability with whoever you have accountability with. Are you reaching out to the people that need to hear from you? Whether it's I have a mentor that I haven't reached out to in a while. Professionally, it might be customers, might be donors at co-op. But we don't know what others are going through, and this world is crazy. And we have friends that are going through hell sideways, and an encouraging word or a check-in would be appropriate. I mean, who's ever gotten mad at somebody for checking on them? Oh, leave me alone.
Yeah. It's easy to forget too, I have big dreams, I want to change the world. I want to save the world. I want to save people. But sometimes you get too caught up in thinking about the big stuff, and you forget that today we have the chance to, leave this podcast, go call somebody or text them and just check in on them, be a friend.
We got today. We're not even assured the rest of today. So what are we going to do with what we got? I tell my kids that, life isn't made up of a few big decisions. It's made up of a million small ones. And, what we do with that is how the end of the game is, how the game ends with your dash, as they say. If people wanted to learn more about co-op, or what I would hope is somebody hears this podcast and they go, that Ryan Jones is a guy I just want to spend time with. And in doing so, you will bless them, and then you can share with them what you're doing at the ministry. How do people get in touch with you or learn more about the co-op?
So my email is Ryan. This is one of the benefits of working for a nonprofit. When I was in banking, I was always like Ryan Jones number 3 or number 2 or whatever. I don't even know, only Ryan Jones, So I'm Ryan at OURNCM.org. And the website for the organization is the same thing. So it's OURNCM.org.
Awesome. Man, I appreciate you being here
on
short notice. So glad to know it's going well. When we had our sort of departure lunch at Longhorn in Brazelton, and it was emotional, but I knew that there was a plan greater for you, and it sounds to me like it's exactly where you need to be. We are so proud of you, and I personally just so happy for you, man. It's awesome. So thanks for coming today.
Thank you, JG.
So that's Ryan Jones, Neighborhood Cooperative Ministries. Y'all check it out. Please take advantage, get to know Ryan a little bit, and see what he can do to help you in your nonprofit or engaging with the community. My other guest is I'm not going to say a new friend, but gotten to know Jason Lord over the last couple of months, and he recently joined our team at Regions as a commercial relationship manager. He lives in the Forsyth area, but he calls across North Georgia, Alpharetta, Johns Creek, Gwinnett, Forsyth. So Jason, man, I put the heat on you following Ryan right there.
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate that. It was really good stuff, though, and the whole time I thought I was the only person in the room that had been ran over by a car, so we have that in common as well. So, but no, really good stuff with sharing, with reaching out to others, just always trying to check in on your friends, because, it's like the whole, the duck in the pond where it looks all calm above the water, but underwater the legs are just kicking like crazy. Yeah. So that's a great reminder to anyone listening to check in on your friends and family, and because you never know what they're going through. But thanks, JD. Happy to be with Regions now, and it's been a great 4 months so far.
Yeah, well, we've certainly thrown you into the deep end of the pool, just to get out there and do what you do. And we Ryan and I and Mike, we talked a lot about relationships, and that's what we do as a banker. How does that hit you when you think about relationship banking?
Well, I look at it as trying to kind of be a trusted advisor to walk the path with the business owners as far as what they're trying to achieve or what their goals are long term, and make sure that kind of what you're doing with them is matching that and is trying to set them up for that success they're looking for. And when I'm having initial conversations with business owners, a lot of times, I'll ask, I say, who's your CPA or who's your attorney? And they always have an answer very quickly. But then I'll say, who's your banker? And they'll name a bank. And I said, well, what about a personal relationship with that bank? And so I try to go, make myself available to customers to make that large bank much smaller, because I have the easy access to all the resources they need. So all they need is my cell phone number.
Yeah, yeah, I've seen you execute on that very well over the last 4 months, and that's certainly what drew us together. So, what is in regards to building those relationships and sort of your track record in banking? What do you like most about banking, and are there sectors of commercial banking that you are more specifically suited for?
Well, one of the things I really enjoy about banking over the last 16 years is kind of seeing progress, or seeing like if you have a construction loan for a new facility, once that business is up and running, you had a small part in that and helped that business owner with that growth or achieve that goal, as I said earlier. So I think you can see the work that you've done play itself out as a tangible in a tangible way. And as far as my long term or my specialties, I guess you could say, I've worked a lot with multifamily, and this kind of goes along with Ryan a little bit, but that's definitely a space that is needed in every community. Mm-hmm. And again, it's a very tangible outcome. And once that's complete, you can see people living, working, and playing in these areas that you helped develop. Done some medical with doctors' offices, and some of the same. I guess the same thing would apply with that. Is you helped this physician open a facility where he can help others in your own community, and in some cases, I may visit that exact office for my healthcare needs too. So it kind of just goes full circle, and I like walking the path with the business owners, start to finish.
Yeah, it's very good that you have some medical experience, because when you bank particular donut shops, those people that eat donuts may need to head to the doctor eventually with all that sugar intake.
Once again, full circle.
I'm just kidding. If you think about, let's for a minute think that maybe you come across a prospect or someone that you'd like to grow a relationship with from a banking perspective. What would you like for them to know about you? And maybe somebody listening to this podcast is, there's turmoil not only in the world but in the banking business. We have some competitors that are going through some system changes, and there's some cash management this and some loan that going on at our competitors. And let the hypothetical business owner or executive that may be listening today, what would you want them to know about you in regards to your commitment to them that may provoke them to reach out?
Well, my commitment typically is that I'm available. As I said earlier, a cell phone call away. There's going to be turmoil in the world, in the banking world, in the foreseeable future, and there's nothing we can do about that. But if availability, whether it for personal, if I'm unhealthy, I want availability with a doctor. Want availability for other services I may need, and that's what I provide to the business owners. Is the bank may be going through X, Y, or Z, but I can navigate that better from the inside, and I'm a phone call away. And I'll give advice. I'm not gonna be a partner in the business, but I'll definitely be an advisor, and just help make some of these strategic decisions, or help guide. Okay, you don't need, as you mentioned earlier, you don't need to go out and borrow that $500,000 to expand right now. Rates are still going to be, while rising, we're still at historic lows. Mm-hmm. So don't go out and just leverage yourself up for panic reasons. Yep. So it's just really walking through the business cycle with a business owner, and a lot of times we have those conversations with business owners well before they become clients. Mm-hmm. And in some cases, I might be an advisor for 12, 18, 24 months, and then finally there's an inflection point or something happens at their bank that puts them over the edge, and they've kind of started to like what they see with the advisor and the relationship, and then they become customers. And so it's just, to me, I take the long-term approach to it.
Yeah.
Don't reach out to somebody and say, hey, can I lend you some money? Get to know what they need. Get to know where they're headed, what their path is, and walk along that with them.
I think along all of our careers, we would see that the most beneficial relationships for both parties are the ones in which you've made the longest investment. Quick relationships tend to be sort of quick-lived, really. So that long-term commitment to getting to know somebody, understanding what they're doing, helping them accomplish something that they themselves may not have seen, That's exactly what people should expect from a banker, especially one with a Regions logo on their card named Jason Lord.
Yeah, and the quick relationship, as you said, I can't pretend to know your business in a 60-minute lunch where half the time is spent talking about the national championship football team from this year that just happens to be here in Georgia.
Yeah, amen.
But yeah, so I can't pretend to know your business in one meeting. So the long-term approach is what everyone should be looking for.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think today's society, we want a quick hit, right? I mean, we want it now, we want it cheap, we want it yesterday, when in fact we tend to see a broader, longer time horizon to get to the right spot along the journey. And that may be, like you said, an expansion, it may be a new building, it may be a new location, it could be acquiring a new company, and you can help with all those things, whether it's buying a piece of equipment, buying a building, leasing a building, mergers and acquisitions. You can do all those things.
Well, certainly. Yeah, we have broad capabilities through Regions with our capital markets group, our wealth group, our core commercial. We have the entire offering that any business would need, from a startup to well-established 20-year businesses that are looking to transition to the next generation. So we kind of have all those capabilities.
We do, and that reminds me, certainly not saying any names, but at the end of last year on this podcast, we talked about the fact that we had 3 or 4 businesses that sold, and in doing so created sort of generational wealth opportunities. So what happened was existing customers sold their business. There was a liquidity event, so our private bank stepped in to help, whether it was establishing trust or investment portfolios. It's a crazy story. One of those individuals that sold their business last year, long-term customer of the bank, sold their business. The assets stayed with Regions Private Wealth because there was a plan. And then, unfortunately, the gentleman passed away early this year, and now we are we're serving as like an executor or a trustee on trust, and it's now the gentleman's passed away, but because everything was buttoned up, his wife and his kids, they get to continue the journey that he had set them on, and we've been there every step of the way. And never once was it, oh, well, what's your rate and fee? It was about a long-term relationship, and those things. You can't duplicate that.
Yeah, and that's a very important point you just brought up, JD. A lot of business owners' succession plan is, well, I'll sell the business, and that liquidity event will take care of all the issues, all the family. But if it's not played out and it's not written down, and if you're not working with someone about what that actually looks like, selling the business is not the great strategy. You have to have all these things in place as far as who can take over, who can. Having the trust or having the advisors well before that happens, because like you said, you're not guaranteed tomorrow. So getting some of those things in place is incredibly important, not just for your business, but for the people who are left trying to work through it if something were to happen to the business owners.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Just got to be prepared. And there are things to prepare for that we don't even know, and we have resources to help with that. How can people get in touch with you if you'd like maybe share your email address or however you'd like to, and if you have anything else that you'd like to share with somebody to provoke them to reach out to you, how can they do that?
Yeah, well, email address, as Ryan was joking about earlier, I don't have any 3s or 4s, but given my last name is Lord, it makes it a little easier to have a simple email, but it's just jason.lord@regions.com. And as far as reaching out, I would just say you're not committing to becoming some customer tomorrow. It's reach out if you have any just general questions. I'd love to learn more about your business and see what we could potentially do to help you down the road.
Yeah. What I like about, starting a new relationship in that regard is just maybe a fresh view. What do things look like now? Our decision matrix has changed dramatically given the current geopolitical environment that we're in. So Jason, I'm very happy to have you as part of the team. I think the business owners and executives that listen to this would do well to to reach out to you, or an opportunity for you to reach out to them. So you can reach Jason again at jason.lord@regions.com. Any closing comments from you, Jason?
No, I appreciate being on, and it was nice to hear more about Neighborhood Co-op as well. That's a ministry that's doing really good work for a very good cause. So thank you for that.
Yeah, two great guys here. Interestingly enough, when Ryan left Regions and we needed a banker in that spot, Jason filled the spot, and they're both great men of character and integrity that I enjoy spending time with. So, and that's what you get from our team at Regions Bank. So, with that said, this has been Regions Business Radio. I am your host, J.D. Mealer. I'm the North Georgia Market Executive, Senior Vice President, Head of Commercial Banking. Please call us if we can help, and thank you for listening.